Hi guys, hi, how's it going? How you doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today we're doing the next video in my palette roulette series in which I pick a couple palettes or a palette or several palettes. I utilize them for a few weeks time and then I come back to you. I show you some pictures of the eye looks I was able to create, some swatches of both of the palettes as well as comparisons if that's the case. And I talked to you about the good, the bad, the ugly of what I experienced with those palettes. And today we're going to be reviewing the Melt Christmas Town and Halloween Town palettes that came out around Halloween time last year. And I hope that sounds like something you're interested in. And if it does, please keep on watching. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I'm a lover of all things high and colorful beauty and self-care. I also work in the beauty industry as a field leader for Ulta Beauty, so I get a lot of education in my position. I like to bring you that education here. But ultimately, I'm just out here talking about makeup because I like to talk about makeup. It brings a joy to my life and it soothes my soul, and I hope that you find that this channel does the same for you and that you'll want to subscribe before you go. With that said, let's roll into this palette roulette palette review video in which I am talking about these two palettes with you. All right. So we can tackle these as palettes together because there's not much difference in them in terms of like formula. I am so excited to be talking about these palettes. And I think that, you know, you guys can see by my eye look, these palettes spawned so much creativity over the last several weeks. I hope that you'll see that in the pictures that I took of the eye looks that I created as well. I want to talk about them separately for long enough just to walk through each palette and what it looks like, but then we'll just talk about the mattes and the shimmers in each palette together as a whole, because I think that that's like the differences in the palette structure is where the differences really end, right? They're both Melt palettes. So this is the Melt Halloween Town palette. This palette is $60 with 0.67 ounces of product or 0.067 ounces per pan. There are 10 shades in this palette. It is a cruelty-free palette. Same, okay. The 10 shades in this palette exemplify characters and spaces in the Nightmare Before Christmas film that reside in Halloween Town for this guy and Christmas Town for this guy. I really, truly dig the cover of it because it is one of those, are they called lenticular or vernacular or whatever it is, covers with the weird like texture to them. I hate touching it, but I do love that it kind of changes as you move the cover, right? Oogie Boogie here on the cover is like dancing a little bit as you change the how you have the palette angled. I love that the palette has a really odd shape, and the odd shape resembles doors in the movies. This palette specifically has purples, blues, and sunny tones that I really don't wholeheartedly think represent Halloween Town. I think that having Oogie Boogie on the cover was a choice because I 100% don't think that this represents Oogie Boogie either. I think that this 100% reminds me of Sally. Let me know if you feel the same way. And there are 6 mattes and 4 metallics in this palette. And it did get 4.8 stars on Melt Cosmetics with 52 reviews and 4.4 stars on Google with 13 reviews. I mean, it's a beautiful palette. I do think that I would probably put this palette somewhere in the 4.4, 4.5 star range as well. Going over the palette component just a little bit, I love that it just says Melt up here in little tiny letters. It looks like the door has Oogie Boogie dancing on it. I love on the inside we've got some like foiled characters in here, and that the mirror is kind of like sitting in a graveyard. I love that. And I love that the back of it says, "Wasn't it terrifying?" Again, with some little headstones here and bats and snakes and bugs and stuff. Like, That reminds me of Oogie Boogie with his bugs. I think that this is definitely Halloween inspired, although I think that the color choice is not necessarily Halloween Town. I think that the color choice is more Sally. This one is Christmas Town. Again, it is a $60 palette. It is a palette that has like Christmas Jack on there, dancing or doing whatever Christmas Jack is doing. And it just has melt up here. It is resembling the doors. And it has, I've made a terrible mess of your holidays on here. It has some of the presents that they did, and then when you open it up, it has a little bit more of a Christmas scene, and the foiling in here is kind of iridescent foiling or holographic foiling, and then the color choice is, I think, more Christmas Town than this one is Halloween Town, if you ask me. I love the color story in this one. And this one also has 10 shades inspired by Santa Jack and Christmas Town, reds, greens, purples. You guys saw 6 mattes, 4 metallics, just like the other one. 4.5 stars is what this one gets on Melt. It only has 11 reviews on Melt. 4.8 stars on Google with 8 reviews, and 4.7 stars on Sephora with 7 reviews. This one is no longer available on Sephora, but this one is, which is why Halloween Town does not have a Sephora review score in my notes. What I would say is that I definitely think that this is the appropriate character for the Christmas Town palette. These colors do remind me of Santa Jack. These colors also remind me of Christmas Town. I think that this should have been Sally on this one. But I mean, whatever. Oogie Boogie is also a beloved character. So there's that. I did end up picking up the entire Halloween Town collection when it came out. And then a friend purchased me Christmas Town because, if I'm honest with you, I was in my feelings about how they launched this collection. I felt like it was a slight bit of a money grab when they could have launched the collection as a whole and put it out as a whole and let people decide what they wanted to pick and choose to go into their collection versus launching one collection and then literally 2 weeks later launching the second collection that was just as much money and had just as many moving parts. And there were pieces of each collection that I would have picked and chose, but I still would have purchased both of the palettes. And when I think of it through that lens, I'm like, man, Melt could have made so much money. Not that they're not making money. I mean, let's be honest, but they could have made, I think, so much more money had they just launched it all as one giant, massive collection for the holiday season versus 2 collections that cost the same amount of money with different moving parts, right? That's it. That's what I got to say about how they launched. But I am so ecstatic to have gotten this as a gift from my friend Angela because I think it would be in my collection today. This palette is on sale on Sephora right now for like $30. I think it's on sale at Melt as well. So I would have picked it up. It just would have been much later, and which wouldn't have been a problem because I'm just now getting a chance to review them, right? So let's talk about the formulas in here, okay? Each one of these palettes has 6 mattes in it, and I feel like the mattes in here were more buildable, more of the buildable formula that we found in the Electrip palette than what we know of Melt in the past. So when I think of like Muerte and Vita, like those mattes were super pigmented, and if you went too hard, there was no blending them out. That is not the case for the mattes in these palettes. I would venture to say, much like I said with Electrip, I feel like the mattes are better these days than they were in the past for Melt. And for many a Melt consumer, I think that that is flipped because what we love about Melt is their pigmentation. I don't feel like you're losing any pigmentation in their new formula. I just think that you have to build it to get it because they changed the formula's easeability and blend And some people don't like that. I, however, love it. I think that it's a smart choice. I think that the mattes in here build very well. I think that they blend very well, whereas mattes of the past with melt would be very finicky and they wouldn't blend, but they also wouldn't build. Like, you couldn't build on top of one another because they would like void each other underneath or just become this really crazy, gross mess of brown on your face because they just got really, really muddy when you put them together because they just didn't build well. They didn't blend well. They didn't marry well. They were awful. Not awful. They were workable. You just had to finesse them. I don't feel that way with the mattes in these palettes. The eyeshadow look that I have on today has almost every single shade in this palette. The only two shades in this palette that are not included in this eye look today are this one here and this one here. So when you look across the gamut of the colors that are in this eye look today, this eye look per typical melt formulation should not look, I mean, truly as beautiful as this eye look looks. It should be muddy and gross, and it's just not, because these are so easy to blend and make a cohesive, beautiful eye look out of colors that maybe should not be cohesive and beautiful together. That said, the mattes are really dry. They're a lot more dry than the mattes of Melt's past. It's not good, bad, nor indifferent in my humble opinion because they still do not fall out at all. I didn't notice any fallout from the mattes, and they still are super, super blendable. They do stain your skin though, so if you are a person that does not like staining, you will not like these palettes or this formula from Melt. I also have on here that their wear time is about 10 hours. I will say that that's like a minimum because I noticed no fading, no movement, no anything at the 10-hour mark when I was taking off my eye look every single day. I will also say that these work well with or without a primer. I put a primer on underneath because I want the colors to like pop and stand out more, so I put a white base on underneath, and therefore the colors like stand out more than I think that they would with like just my bare skin, and that's why I used a primer. I do think that Melt overall works better with a drier primer, but I also think that it's very strange that this time around, like these shimmers on my eye look, there is no glitter glue under these shimmers, and I don't feel like they've moved or budged or anything, and that is different from Melt Cosmetics in my humble opinion. Speaking of the shimmers are pretty dense. I do feel like these are also a different formula of shimmer than we've grown accustomed to expecting from Melt Cosmetics. I don't think that they're nearly as sparkly in the pan or in a swatch as they actually, I mean, these are not lacking sparkle, and Melt Cosmetics, besides the inner corner, Melt Cosmetics is the only thing that is in my eye look today. So these do not lack sparkle. I just think that they look different in the pan than what we've grown accustomed to expecting from Melt. I also think that they are a little bit more dense or thick than they have been in the past. They don't feel like the same kind of shimmers that we've had from Melt in the past. In the Halloween Town one specifically, I think that the ones in the Christmas Town one are a little bit different. I do think, and these are the shimmers that I did put on my face today. I do think that the shimmers in this palette are more of a topper formula than the ones that are in the Halloween Town palette. These ones are a little bit more firmly pressed than these ones are. These ones kind of fell out a little bit today, whereas these ones just didn't fall out at all. And I think a lot because they are just firmly pressed. I think that those ones are also a lot more opaque than these ones here. These ones I think are a little bit more sheer. So you have to kind of build them up to get any kind of like true to pan opacity out of them, which isn't a problem. They don't like exacerbate texture or anything like that. They're just truly stunning. The shimmers also in these palettes have a great wear time. This is the first time I'm actually wearing them without a glitter glue underneath. So I can't tell you what the wear time is currently right now, but I'll pop it up in the screen, what it is without a glitter glue underneath. But I do think that the wear time with a glitter glue lasts every bit of the 10 hours that I had with them on my face prior to taking off my makeup. So I do think that that is a minimum wear time as well. As always with Melt Cosmetics and with many shimmers on the market, I would tell you that the best way to put these on your eyes is with your finger. If you want that amazing like sparkly nature that you're looking for from them. You can also use a wet brush. These today were applied with a wet brush. So I think that a wet brush does the same job. What I would also encourage you to do if you're picking up a Melt palette of this nature, if you're picking up one or the other, is instead of using brushes like this, you know, to put in that crease color, my suggestion is to use instead brushes like this, because the more densely packed the brush is, I found the easier it was to get the ease of blend out of the shadows in this palette than it was with a big fluffy brush like this. I just think that the fluffy brush is going to like take it wherever it wants to take it, and also not have enough girth behind it to actually spread the color. It's not a super soft formulation, so you need something a little bit more girthy to blend beautifully, something of a little bit more girth, if that makes any sense. With that said, I do feel like there's a ton of redundancy between the two palettes, and I'm gonna showcase that for you when we look at swatches. I don't think both of these palettes needed to exist 2 weeks apart, no less, in the Melt lineup. I do think that there could have been maybe a different, like, again, this is Sally in a nutshell. So like when I think of like even Oogie Boogie on the front cover, like where is my like burlap sack yellow, or like even a brown or a tan? Like I know whatever, that's a boring color, but I also know that this color story isn't 100% reminiscent of Halloween Town nor Oogie Boogie on the front cover. And even the shade in this palette called Oogie Boogie is listed on the website as a chartreuse, but this is so much a gold. It doesn't remind me of Oogie Boogie in the slightest. It also doesn't remind me of a chartreuse in the slightest, although what's funny is that this matte is a chartreuse, and that matte butted up against that yellow makes that yellow look chartreuse. So there's that. You'll see in the swatches, because I swatched them next to each other. I think that there is far too much redundancy in these two palettes. I think that this one makes sense. I think this one should have been different. If you're in a hurry, these are not going to be the palettes for you. If you're used to Melt's old formula of packing into an eye look and calling it good and not really blending and all the things, you're not going to love this formula, because it is definitely a more user-friendly, or more, I would say, quasi-newbie friendly, but it's definitely not a newbie formulation nor newbie colors, to be honest. But it's definitely more of a user-friendly formula than Melt has been in the past. So if you loved Melt's formula previously, you're probably not going to like this one super much, especially the shimmers, because I think that the shimmers are completely different for maybe not the best. Whereas the mattes I think are completely different for the best. If you're new to makeup, these are not the palettes for you. If you're new to makeup, Melt isn't the brand for you. Let's just be honest. You have to have a certain level of knows what to do in an emergency crisis with your eyeshadow in order to make Melt work for you. But if you don't like color, obviously these are not going to be the palettes for you, because there isn't one everyday shade in here, except for maybe this orange and yellow, but neither one of them is matte. Let's look at the swatches. So on one side of my arm, you will see the shades from Halloween Town, and on the other side right next to them, you will see the shades from Christmas Town. On the Halloween Town side, you see Gone Again, which is a metallic copper orange, Oogie Boogie is a metallic chartreuse, quote unquote. Then we have Ooze, which is a matte deep teal blue. Shrek, which is a matte teal blue. Ragdoll, which is a matte sky blue. Mausoleum, which is a metallic seafoam. This one is more loose than the others in this palette, and I think is very reminiscent of the toppers in the Christmas Town palette. And I think that you can see that it's a lot more sheer than the others in this palette. And then we have the Mayor, which is a muted kind of orchid fuchsia matte color. Wormswort, which is an electric fuchsia pink shimmer. Then we have My Bugs, which is a matte lilac. Then we have a Bone Daddy, which is a deep plum matte, which looks very, very black in an eye look. For the Christmas Town side, we have Smithereens, which is a matte emerald green. Mistletoe, which is a sheer minty green topper. Eureka, which is a matte chartreuse. Experiments, a sheer champagne green topper. Sugar Plum Visions, a sheer amethyst purple with some blue sparkly shifts in there. Bony Fingers, which is a metallic deep violet with blue and pink sparkly shimmers. Christmas Town, a matte deep violet. Nightmare, which is a matte deep burgundy. Sandy Claus, which is a matte crimson red or true red. And then No One's Dead, which is on the website listed as a matte white. This is definitely not a white. This is kind of like a bluish gray. But I think that you can also see there's so much that is super similar in this. I think that Ooze, which is the deep teal in Halloween Town, and Smithereens, which is the matte emerald green in Christmas Town, looks so similar. I also think that it's funny what I said a minute ago about Oogie Boogie in Halloween Town and Eureka in Christmas Town. The matte chartreuse makes that Oogie Boogie shade really look chartreuse. I mean, you can see this in the swatches, like next to each other, they look like they could be the same color. One of them is a shimmer and the other one is a matte, but literally the same color. When you look at Bone Daddy on the Halloween Town side against Christmas Town in the Christmas Town side, like I think that they're very, very similar. Both of them look nearly black in an eye look, and therefore are the same color in an eye look, whether there is a slight shade variation in the palettes or no. I also think, honestly, I would have preferred No One's Dead to actually be a white versus this kind of like gray blue. Now, don't get me wrong, No One's Dead is in my eye look today. It is what is in my brow bone, and it kind of quasi looks like a white in my brow bone. It is the color that I used quite often in my inner corner and my brow bone because it was in the shade. I loved it actually for that purpose, but it didn't go with everything because it's not white. It's actually very gray or blue. So it went really well with the teal shades, and it goes really well actually with this eye look today. But I do think that it would have been great for it to actually be white. Now, with that said, I cannot be happier that I have these palettes. I love Melt Cosmetics. As inconsistent as they are, I love Melt Cosmetics. Their brand just inspires me like no other brand does. And I don't do these kind of eye looks very often, but I feel like every time I'm messing with a Melt Cosmetics palette, I am always doing these kind of eye looks. And I think maybe like reminiscent about my experience with Melt Millennial Pinks, I think that that is why I didn't, maybe a reason or a portion of the reason why I didn't love that palette is because it did not spark my creativity in the way that most Melt palettes spark my creativity, in addition to the fact that the formula was trash. I'm super happy to have these palettes in my collection. I really did enjoy every single moment that I had with these palettes. And I think that you will see that they created, I mean, as crazy, not appropriate for work color story-esque as these are, I do think that there is enough variety between the two of them that you can get some really beautiful everyday appropriate eye looks, but I am also a hashtag purple is a crease color kind of person. So there's that. Let me know what you guys think about these palettes and about what we've shown in the swatches, because I would sure be interested to hear your thoughts. I am really happy. I can foresee me pulling these palettes often. I mean, as a matter of fact, like coming to you today to do the palette roulette, like I knew I needed to get the palette roulette done, but I didn't want to put these palettes down. I have been having such a good time with these palettes, and I think even the like ugly eye looks that I have done with this palette, with these palettes, are fantastic. And I have now, like, the eye look on my face today is mostly this palette, and the eye look on my face yesterday, which I don't think I filmed yesterday, but I do have a picture, was mostly this palette. I have done eye looks using every single shade in the palette, and still they end up just so pretty, and they shouldn't, based on the color story that's in these palettes. So like I can't complain. I love these palettes so much. So I'm gonna go pick a new palette or two. I will be right back. That was faster than I thought it was going to be. I chose a couple of like little minis for the next couple weeks. I mean, it's 4 palettes that I can immediately pull out of my drawer of shame. So I'm going to say, yes, please. I have all 3 of my Ribbon eye quads that I purchased in Alaska last time I was there, which was in early March, I believe. And then I also have my Bijou Brilliance palette from Pat McGrath Labs holiday collection that I purchased a couple months prior to that. So we are going to utilize these 4 quads. This one I think is a quint, but we're going to utilize these 4 over the next several weeks, and I can't be more stoked about it. I'm really super excited to try these palettes out. We have a green color story, kind of a brown peachy color story, and kind of a lavender color story. And what I remember about this one is I think it's kind of a blue burgundy color story. Let's pull it out. Let's look at it. Yeah, it's a blue burgundy color story. I think this one's going to be pretty difficult because there is one whole matte in this palette. So why would I even pick that up? Who knows? But they're going to go beautifully together. I really firmly believe that. So these are the 4 palettes that we'll be utilizing over the next several weeks. And I'll come back to you next time and review. Give me a few weeks with them, and we'll be sitting on another review. With that said, I would be interested to hear your thoughts. Have you used the Ribbon palettes before? Have you used the Bijou Brilliance palette by Pat McGrath before? Have you used these palettes before? Did I talk you into buying either one of these palettes? Listen, I am a color lover. These are some fantastic palettes. I love them so dang much. But with that said, thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed the video. I hope that you and yours are doing well, that you are all healthy, safe, and getting along as best you can. I hope that you are all loving each other, being kind humans, and just, you know, being nice, saying nice things. And until next time, bye friends.